Good morning. I took today off to get some things done for our holiday season, but thinking about gardening, I'm thinking about the 2024 garden and wanted to share a few thoughts. So this is things I'm thinking about in terms of my planning and just some suggestions if you're trying to figure out what are the things that are going to go into maybe my first garden or second garden, or just what are the priorities in terms of what to put in the ground for what you or your family needs. Now, right where our Christmas tree is, as soon as that comes out, that's where our plant stand goes. We don't have a ton of space in our house. It's an open concept house, and space is interesting when you have a completely open floor plan. But anyway, that's where our plant stand goes. It's just a utility shelf that you would use for storage in your basement or your garage with LED grow lights hanging at each level. So using that and one heat mat, plastic trays. You want nice sturdy plastic trays so you don't end up leaking water on the floor. I start a lot of plants. Like, I start plants for my garden, which is getting to the point where it's roughly 1,000 square feet of growing space. And I share probably 50 to 100 plants with friends and neighbors. So that's way more space than one would need for a smaller garden. So the things what I'm thinking about right now is, what seeds do I already have? Like, what do I already have plenty of? Because if you buy a pack of peppers, the amount of seeds that are in there are going to last for multiple years. You do lose some of your germination rate, but then kind of like as the seeds get older, I'll just put more seeds in one pot and gamble a little bit on wasting a couple seeds. But you know, what seeds do I already have? And then what do I actually need? So my non-negotiables that will probably be in every single garden I ever grow, the first thing I'm going to choose are my tomatoes, my peppers, onions, basil, and sweet potatoes. Those are just things that we use a lot. I'm very fluent with cooking with those things. So if I have those ingredients on hand, I don't really have to think much about the meal that's going to come together for my husband and myself. My kids don't eat a lot of it, but that's a side note, maybe someday. So those are the things that will 100% go in my garden every year. Something to think about in terms of tomatoes. Tomatoes come in determinate and indeterminate varieties. Determinate means the plant grows to a determined size, it sets a determined amount of blossoms, and gives you a determined amount of fruit, and it tends to ripen in more at one time, like mostly at one time. The Romas I plant, I don't know if they can be both, but the Romas that I had this past year were determinate. I think they all are, but I could be wrong there. So Romas are a good plant to start if you want to be able to can some tomatoes, because you get a bigger chunk coming in at one time. I think I had 7 or 8 Romas planted. I canned a ton of tomato sauce from those 7 or 8 Romas. So if you had 3 or 4, you would get a lot of tomatoes coming in out of the garden to can or freeze. And then if you enjoy eating tomatoes raw, having a cherry or a grape tomato, because again, quantity wise, you're going to get more that you can just grab to like throw in a salad or just, eat as a snack, that kind of thing. So those would be, I would say, if you're just getting started, don't have a ton of time, don't have a ton of space, I would probably plant a handful of Romas, and I'd probably plant 1 or 2 cherry or grape tomato plants. Peppers, we use a ton of peppers. If you want something, the bell peppers take longer to give you fruit, and they don't produce as much as some others. So if you want something where you can just go out, you can harvest some peppers to be able to, dog needs to come in, hang on. If you want to have something where you can just go out, grab some peppers to saute, or to throw in something, a salad or something like that, I think banana peppers, sweet banana or hot banana, and hot Hungarian wax, that style of pepper is a great one to grow. I feel like it's really universal. It has nice flavor, and they tend to be very productive. Jalapenos the same way. So I guess it depends on kind of the level of heat that you want. But those, if I had a smaller garden or didn't have a lot of time, or restrictions that life brings to us, that is something that I would be growing. I have decided this year, we got some free seeds like these, and then I tried Sugar Rush Peach. For me, those were like a thinner walled hot pepper, and I didn't enjoy cooking with them as much. I've decided I love jalapenos, and I'm going to cook those. Oh, favorite thing I just grew last year, jalapenos. I got them from Baker Creek. This one right here. I don't know if other places have them, but they look like a jalapeno. They have the flavor of a jalapeno without the heat. I really enjoyed those last year, so I'll probably be growing. I grew 2 last year. That's going to go up to 4 or 5 plants because I felt like they were just a wonderful universal thing to grow. Onions. I love growing onions because they don't require a lot of me. Like if I get them in the ground, I have them well mulched, I just leave them be. And then when the tops fold over, they're ready for storage, or they're ready to be finished drying, pull them out. I have an old stepladder on my front patio. I drape them over the rungs to dry, and then they trim off the tops, they go to the basement. Also, I'll be picking them continuously for meals throughout the spring, summer, and fall. So 2 options with onions. Sets, those are the ones when you buy them, they look like baby onions. They look like little tiny onions. From my understanding, those are in their 2nd year of growth. An onion is a biennial. It will grow for 2 years. In the 2nd year, it throws off its seeds. Now, it can get a little confused if you plant, getting ahead of myself, but they typically produce their seeds in the 2nd year. Again, from my understanding, if I'm saying something incorrect, feel free to correct me in the comments. So those will get you started, and they are great to grow, and I would recommend using those if you want just fresh eating onions. They don't store as well from my experience, because if they're in their 2nd year, kind of like in the onion brain, they're like, okay, we're done. We don't really need to hang around for the next year because we've already done our job. Onion starts are onions that were started in that year from seed, and they're a plant. They've got a green on them. You've got roots on them already, that kind of thing. That's what I've switched to doing primarily, and I've started growing my own onion starts from seed because it's just a lot cheaper, and also those I get to start in like January, so I get something green on my shelf first thing. So my goal last year was to try to grow enough onions to last the year. We'll have to see once we hit spring how we're doing with that. So far, we're doing great. Onions just go in a ton of dishes, so for me, if I have onions and a few other things, there's a lot of things I can make. So onions I grow lots of, so kind of choose what your priority is. There's not a wrong answer. Sets versus starts. I grow a whole bunch in one pot, so you can get a lot of onions going in just like one pot with soil. So the thought there, and they can go out earlier, they can handle cold, so once you've had them hardened off means used to the sun outside, your grow lights are not nearly as strong as the sunlight is. So when you're ready to get them outside, you have to start getting them outside in increments so they get used to the sun, so the sun doesn't burn them when you put them in the ground. Basil, I love the smell of basil. I love pesto. When I can get a jar of frozen pesto out of the freezer and make something in the winter, it makes me think of summer. That basil smell is just wonderful. So we love having basil in the garden. My girls will just pick a leaf and just walk around smelling it because it's just so lovely. Lemon basil makes really nice tea. Just a thought there. Sweet potatoes. Picking a sweet potato or digging a sweet potato is like kind of like digging for buried treasure. I love harvesting them. They store really well. I've had some that have stored for over a year that I could still use. And they're another thing that I enjoy getting started in the spring, or actually I have one going right now, for the following year. Something I'm going to try to grow more of and get better with is potatoes, because every person in my family will eat potatoes. So last year I think I grew probably around 50 to 60 pounds of potatoes. The challenge for me is storing them. They tend to want to sprout on me, so working on that. And I got a pressure canner, haven't learned to use that yet, so that's on the docket for next year. But potatoes I really enjoy growing, and they're just a nice universal hearty thing to have to put into a meal. I have not mastered storage of my potatoes yet. And then something that I really like to grow, and this is kind of depending on your diet and how you cook, I love to grow dried beans. I like to have a variety of things in terms of how I need to process them. Because if I have a ton of tomatoes, when the tomato is ripe, the tomato needs to be taken care of. It needs to be frozen, it needs to be cooked, it needs to be canned. There's not a long shelf life for that. For dried beans, I plant them, I let them grow. When they start to dry, the pods dry out, I cut the plant off, I hang it on my front patio under a roof, and I let it dry. I bring them in, and then I start shelling them in the fall, inside in a cozy seat with football on in the background. And we've got, I think, 8 quart jars full of dried beans, which is a lot of meals, and they're shelf stable, and I really enjoy it. We have black beans and cave beans. I don't know if I'll expand past that because we really enjoy the black beans, but that's one thing that I enjoy growing, and it's easy. In the spring, the things that can go out when you're still getting cold weather, that actually prefer the cold weather are, dog needs to go out. Okay, so radishes, peas, greens of any kind, lettuce, spinach, Swiss chard, kale, arugula, mustard greens. Those are all things that can grow when it's cold. Those things I just listed are all things that I direct seed. I plant the seed in the soil outside and let it germinate in the natural conditions. Some things that you want to start ahead. So these are going to be, hang on. So those are the things that I'm going to start actually probably February, to be able to go out in March, like 6 to 8 weeks. My goal is to be able to get them out mid to end of March if possible, or the beginning of April, depending on how the spring goes. Again, those need to be hardened off, gotten used to the sun so they can go outside. The dog needs to come back in. So those are the things that you need to get hardened off and used to the sun before you plant them outside. Now, word of warning, I think, in my opinion, broccoli, cabbage, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts are a little tricky. They tend to be something, and this is from an organic standpoint, because this is how I grow, so it's how I can offer advice. They're tricky because they get hit by a lot of pests. I'm working on it. I'm getting better. As I learn, I will share. But if you're newer to gardening and you're trying those things and it's not working, don't get down on yourself and don't get frustrated. They are tricky. So I'd say try them. Bug netting is very helpful, just to keep, you want a structure of some kind, like some 9-gauge wire as a hoop to keep the bug netting up off the plant, to keep the moths and things that will lay eggs on those brassicas and then eat them and make them look gross. So they are tricky. It is okay to plant something and observe, knowing that you may not harvest from it. Try it. If you plant it without any coverage, without putting anything on it, and see how your conditions allow that thing to grow. I had really good luck with broccoli this year. haven't in the past. I did not have it covered. So it is okay to experiment. You're not a bad gardener if you don't get a harvest from a particular plant, just FYI. And onions can go out in the cold too. So those are something that I plant maybe like mid to early April, because they can handle snow on their heads, they can handle cold, they are fine. I have been told, or I have read, that they can get a little confused if they're warm, get cold, and then it gets warm again. They feel like they've gone through their second season, and they might be more prone to throw off a seed head. If they throw off a seed head, cut it off. It's a little round, like this shape. You can tell what I mean, right? Okay, we'll talk about that more later. And also the things that spinach, I have never, ever had good luck with spinach, working on that one. Also, squashes can be tricky. Again, from an organic standpoint, squash bugs, cucumber beetles, and vine borers are kind of the bane of the organic gardener's existence. So if those aren't working well for you, not a bad gardener, you don't have a black thumb, they can be tricky. Again, as I learn, I will share things that I have learned. And then it's not the right timing for it, but something to kind of put in the back of your head. Garlic is amazing to grow. If you cook with garlic, which most of us crazy gardener, organic gardeners, homesteaders, and put us in any category, love to cook with garlic. Adds so much flavor and that kind of thing. You plant that in the fall. So spring is not the time to plant it. If anybody ever has planted in the spring and had good luck, please let us know in the comments. Ours went in usually end of September, beginning of October. I guess middle of September to middle of October-ish. Somewhere in there is fine. We've planted as late as November. You mulch it really good for the winter. It comes up in the spring. It's one of the first things up in the spring. It's green. It's beautiful. Highly recommend adding garlic to your garden because it's very enjoyable. Also, side note, cilantro is a cool weather crop. So it's one of those, like, I love making salsa. I don't know how to have fresh cilantro and tomatoes at the same time because tomatoes are coming in when it's hot. Cilantro is well beyond bolted by that point. So I think if you want to be able to make your own salsa, you're gonna have to grow your cilantro in the spring or the fall and dry it and add it to your salsa, or you're gonna have to buy it, which I don't like to buy fresh herbs because they're insanely expensive. So those are some gardening thoughts I have. When you go to pick seeds, it can get overwhelming and it can get expensive quickly. My thoughts are, put the things in, like, make your list. Like, what are the things I definitely want to grow? Absolutely 100% want to grow. Make your list or put those things in the cart. Check the price and then experiment with a few things. Also, like, the amount of seeds in one package for a backyard gardener is way more than you ever need. So if you have some gardening friends, you get, like, kind of collaborate maybe on some of the things you both want to grow and split the seed packet. Also with, like, lettuce and radishes, if you grow them for 1 year and collect the seeds, you will never, ever, ever have to buy that particular seed again. I've been using Save Seed for my lettuce for 2 or 3 years now. The radishes I planted this past year were all from Save Seed. Just a thought, we'll cover that. We'll talk maybe more about that in another video. So we're coming up on 20 minutes. I want to get to some of the other things I have planned for the day. This video is going to go up unedited form, dog interruptions, dog ears in the video, and all of that. Thank you so much for joining me for a little garden thought planning, excitement for the 2024 gardening season. And Lucky and I thank you for being here with us today and hope you're having a great day wherever you are.